Hi, it's Andy from Cruise. Today we're going to take a walk through one of the central measurements that Tensio provides, and that's interfacial tension measurements. Interfacial tension is a fundamental property, and it's relevant to a whole range of different applications, from cosmetic products and medical formulations to enhanced oil recovery, and even things like transformer oil degradation testing. So something, for example, like this, or like water and oil, where I have a light phase sitting on top of a heavy phase and they won't mix together. And it turns out this interfacial tension property directly affects how these two liquids stay separated. And this plays a significant role in the process of, for example, emulsification, where if I want these two liquids to mix together and have them stay mixed together, I need to do something to this mixture to reduce that interfacial tension and help them emulsify. From the other side, if I wanted to separate two liquids that were mixed together, then I would need to do something to help them de-emulsify. Emulsions can be found everywhere in our everyday lives, perhaps most obviously in the area of food science. A really classic example would be if we want to make a dressing for a salad. Here I have some rapeseed oil and some balsamic vinegar. Mixing these two liquids together is very much like what happens, say, in the oil extraction industry, when we need to create a stable emulsion of water and crude oil. Now, normally these two liquids would not mix well together, but by using certain additive surface active agents, we can help them to mix. Now, for my salad, the longer that this mixture remains stable, the better, as is also the case for oil recovery. Unlike for my salad, when we want to extract oil though, after you've taken the mixture out, or the emulsion out of the well site, it then needs to be demulsified again so that you can separate the water and the oil and you can take the oil from the top. So that's it for the overview. Now let's get into the measurements themselves. First, I'm going to go over an Open Advance. And from here, I now want to navigate to my Wilhelmy interfacial tension measurement. That's here. And I can choose the predefined measurement template. And then just open a new measurement. Now, the interfacial tension measurement, like with all measurements in Advance, has the same kind of template and format. And that means you can go from the top left down to the bottom right as you work through your measurement itself. So if we start at the top left, we can give our measurement a name, in this case, dressing. And I now need to tell Advance the liquids that I'm going to be using. So first of all, my heavy phase, in this case, will be vinegar. And my light phase will be the rapeseed oil. From there, all I have to do is press the Start Automation Program button, and that then presents me with a box of instructions from Advance of what I need to do the measurement. So you don't have to remember the steps, you can just open the measurement and it will guide you through what you need to do. So first I need to clean the probe and attach it to the force sensor. So I can take my Wilhelmy plate here, I just want to wash it with some distilled water, and then with a flame I'm going to heat the plate up to activate it. So I just quickly wash it on both sides. And then you can just use a standard lab Bunsen or gas burner to heat the plate up. I'm just looking that the plate gets to red hot. Now I'll just leave it a few seconds to cool down a bit before I put it onto the force sensor. And I put it into Tensio. Okay, Now the next step is for me to prepare my light phase liquid, so that's the rapeseed oil in this case. So I can just fill some of the oil into my glass here. And Advanced tells me that I need about 60 milliliters. Should be there. And now I can put this onto the table of the Tensio. And the next step is to move the liquid close to the bottom border of the Wilhelmy plate. So I can just raise the sample stage up. And I'd just like to save this position so that I can use it later. So I'll just save it so I can automatically recall it. So now that everything's ready, I can go back over to Advanced and click OK to start the first part of the measurement. Now what will happen is we need to find out what the buoyancy force of this plate in my oil is before we can start the rest of the measurement. So Tensio will dip the plate into the liquid a little bit, just as much as is needed to cover the plate. And then it will measure the buoyancy force of that. That will then be information we use for the next part of the measurement. So at the moment it's just done its surface detection. It's dipped the plate all the way in. It will take its measurement and then it will bring the plate back out again so we can carry on. Okay. Now for the next part, I get another box showing up on Advanced telling me what I need to do for the next few steps. So first of all, I need to take the rapeseed oil out. So to do that, just lower the sample stage. I'll take that out. I can save that for later because we'll need it again. Then I need to clean my sample probe again. So now it's covered in oil. Like before, I want to wash it, but this time water won't be enough to wash off this rapeseed oil. So here I've got some solution, some solvent solution. And I can just dip the plate in there, and that will dissolve any of that oil. And then to finish, I'll rinse it just quickly with isopropyl alcohol. And then as a final step, again with distilled water. Now we have a nice clean plate. The next step, like before, I need to activate the surface of my plate by heating it up. So I've got my gas burner out again. And again, I just want to roll the plate in the flame until it starts to glow red hot. Okay. And with that, I just leave it to cool for 1 or 2 seconds. And I can put it back into the force sensor of Tensio. Okay, now I can check back what my next instructions are. I need to take a new glass and fill in about 50 milliliters of my vinegar. Should be just about enough. I can put this onto the sample stage and move back up so that the liquid is close to the bottom of the plate. Okay. Now all that's left to do is to press OK again in the software. And this is going to be much like the measurement that we just did, or the first part of the measurement, where it's now going to dip the plate into the vinegar. But actually, instead of going all the way in, it's just going to find the surface, just so that it just started to be wetted by the vinegar itself. So it should do its surface detection now. And it's just slowly moving the sample up towards the plate. There we go. Now it's dipped it in just by a millimeter. And now we have the last step of the measurement. So Advance has come up and told me I need to now pour over an exact amount of the rapeseed oil on top of this without moving anything. So for this, I can take my syringe here. First of all, I want to take some oil. And Advance has told me I need 37.4 milliliters, just there. Yep, just right. And now very carefully, without disturbing anything, I just want to pour this on top of my vinegar so I get my two phases. I just use the syringe on the back wall of the glass so that the oil runs down the back and just gently lies on top of the vinegar. Now we're ready for the last part of the measurement. All I have to do is press OK on Advance again. And now the plate is really sitting at the interface between the oil and the vinegar. So it's already at that interface. And then it's just going to run like a normal surface tension measurement and measure the tension being pulled on our plate. So it's just going to run through a few steps, opening the force sensor. And now it's recorded its measurements already, and we can go into Advance and have a look at the results. If I go down through the software, we can see there are 13 measurement points in this case. And what's happened is inside my template, Advance has been programmed to measure and look at the standard deviation between each measurement. And it will keep measuring until that standard deviation reaches a certain value. And it's looking to get 10 values within that range. So here we can see in the first 3 measurements, my interfacial tension has drifted a little bit down. And then as it started to stabilize, I've now got my 10 valid measurements. If I go down to the bottom, my results are summarized here. So I can see I've got an interfacial tension of 14.2. In this case, because the interfacial tension is relatively high, that means the two phases will quickly separate again and they will be difficult to mix together, which means I'll end up with a salad that is in some parts too bland and in some parts too intense where the vinegar is concentrated. Now, if I want to try and stabilize my mixture so that I don't get this, I need to find a way to reduce the interfacial tension using some kind of surfactant. Now, around the kitchen, honey or egg, these are good sources of natural surfactants. But in this case, I'm actually going to add some mustard to my vinegar. And then with this mixed in, we can take a look at how the interfacial tension has changed, and we can start to have an idea about how that's going to affect my salad dressing. So first of all, I'm going to duplicate the measurement that I had before. So I don't need to go back to the start and make a new measurement, but I can just copy the first measurement. This means it will automatically give me a name and fill in the heavy and light phases for my measurement. So now all I have to do is press Automation Start. And just like before, I get the same instructions. Now we can go back over. First of all, I need to go through, like I did before, cleaning the plate and so on. So I'm just going to take out my old sample. I can lay that over here. And now first, clean my plate so I can take out my solvent mixture again. And just dip the plate in to wash it off. And then again with isopropyl alcohol. And with some distilled water just to wash it off. Okay. As always, we have to activate the plate before we can measure with it. So I take out my gas burner. And I just want to heat the plate up until it starts to glow red hot. Okay. Now I'll just leave it to cool down in the air for a few more seconds. And when that's ready, I can put it onto the force sensor of Tensio. Good. So, now that my probe's clean, like before, I need to fill in my rapeseed oil into my vessel. So I can take some again and fill it to about 60 milliliters. Should be about there. Place it on the sample stage and close the door. And now I want to bring the sample stage up again. Because I saved my position in the first measurement, I can now just recall this position again. And it stops just shortly before the liquid. That's good. Now everything's set up, I can go back to advance and press OK. And it will go through those steps again. So like we did before, first of all, it needs to dip the plate into the oil to see what the buoyancy force of the plate is in the oil. Right, so we'll start with the surface detection. And here the sample stage will move the sample slowly up towards the bottom of the plate until they touch. Okay, so it's just touched the sample there. It's dipping the plate in. And when it's finished with that, Advance will pop up with another message for the next steps. There we go. And again, we want to take out our sample and clean the probe. Take that out. Get out my solvent solution. Just wash that off a bit. Once more with isopropyl alcohol. And finally with water. Make sure you clean both sides of the plate and there's no residue left on it. And then you can heat it up in the burner. And it's just about starting to glow red hot there. You can let it cool down for a few seconds in the air. And put it back inside. Okay, so now for the next step, I want to put my vinegar sample into the Tensio. But this time, instead of just putting pure vinegar, I want to add my surfactant. So I've got my mustard here, and I'll just take another glass. Put a little bit of this in. Now put my vinegar on top. Again, I need to fill in just over 50 milliliters of the vinegar. And then I'll just mix this around. Make sure the mustard is well distributed. Okay. Now I can put this mixture back onto the sample stage and I can start with the next step. I'll move my sample up using my automatic positioning. And in the software, I press the OK button again. And it will just run through those steps again. This time measuring, just putting the plate a little bit into the surface of the vinegar, right? Just so we've got the plate right on the interface of what will be the interface between the vinegar and the oil. Okay, so now we've got the interface. And again, I need to fill over 37.4 milliliters of my rapeseed oil. So I take my syringe again. Okay. And like before, this is the most delicate part of the measurement. Just very carefully come into the back of the glass with your syringe and just lay the oil on top of the vinegar. Okay. Close the door. And for the last time, we can press OK in the software. And now the plate is sitting at the interface and Tensio can continue measuring the interfacial tension. So if we go back over to Advance, so if I move down through the software, again, we have our measurements like before. It's taken several results. That means we have a bit of a dynamic effect. So the interfacial tension is slowly dropping during the measurement. We expect this to happen when we have a surfactant present, because it takes a bit of time for those surfactants to reach that interface. So the interfacial tension will have some kind of time dependency. But again, the way I have my automation program programmed, Tensio will look for a stabilization in those values. So it's waiting till we reach some kind of equilibrium. And already we can see the interfacial tension has dropped quite significantly. If I move down to our summary of the results, we have a mean interfacial tension of about 1.2 in comparison to the 14 millinewtons per meter that we had before. So seeing that the mustard has reduced the interfacial tension between the rapeseed oil and the vinegar, I now know that my dressing will be more stable for longer, and that'll help me to get a tastier salad. Or if we think about the case with oil recovery, now that my interfacial tension is lower, I'll be able to more easily create a stable emulsion between, say, water and crude oil, which is then ready to be pumped up to the surface for processing. So this has been our video on interfacial tension. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again next time.